everyone, it's Sam. Thanks for dropping by. Today we're going to be making a quilt called Fat Quarter Fizz. It's by the Fat Quarter shop. Finished, they say it'll make a decent sized throw. It's 60.5 by 72.5, and for the top you're going to need 10 light colored fat quarters and 10 dark colored fat quarters. Let me show you what I picked up. So these are my fabric choices. I've got my 10 light colored fat quarters up here, 10 dark down here, and yes, I realize that none of them match or coordinate in any sort of way. That's kind of the point. So let's get these all unwrapped, ironed, cut, and get to it. We're gonna iron all these out, stack them nice and straight, and then since I have a larger rotary cutter, and I'll show you what I mean here. This is my normal Fiskars rotary cutter. I got it. This is my first one. Because I super like peacocks. However, to cut this many fabrics in a row, you'll need the heavy duty one. If you don't have this gigantic one, I would highly suggest that you only do maximum 3, maybe 4 fabrics at a time, especially if you're less confident about your ability to keep those straight. Let me pull my ironing mat over here and we'll get going. Okay, so now that I have all the darks ironed and stacked as pretty well as I can, luckily this pattern doesn't necessarily mandate that you be extremely particular when it comes to using all of the fabric. Fat quarters are supposed to be 21 inches by 18 inches. And I've seen them all sorts of variations of not that size. So you're actually going to cut 2 separate blocks from this stack, and then you'll cut the same size blocks from the light stack. And again, specifics you can find in the pattern from Fat Quarter shop, but let me go ahead and get this squared up. I like to put the edge of this ruler on the closest inch line that I can find. And they say you're only supposed to cut with the hand that you're dominant with, but I am right-handed and I'm going to cut with my left hand. I need to replace my blade. These things are fighting with me. Alright, so I tried going really slow and deliberate, but just put that in my trash jar. Obviously, if your blade's not sharp, or you have 10 fabrics stacked on top of each other, it's going to be kind of hard to cut. Let me finish squaring this up. And see, if I were to pull it down to this 1 inch mark here, I'd barely be getting to the bottom of this fabric. And I don't want to do that. So since I have, I really only need 19 of these supposed 21 inches, I'm going to go up a bit to make sure I get all of those selvages off. And then I can use my dominant hand, yes, at a weird angle, to cut. Alright, so I guess I was just using the wrong hand earlier. Alright, and here's a bit of controversy. A lot of people won't use the measurements on their mat to actually measure their fabric. You'll see as we go here, I am not that particular. Yes, a good point is to make a quality, beautiful product. However, if you're not having fun at all while you're doing it, then what's the point? So for me to be overly meticulous or pre-wash my fabrics or use starch, it doesn't really change the outcome of a beautiful quilt for me. So I do it the easy way. Work smarter, not harder. So I've got all of my fabrics lined up on the 3-inch mark here. And these blocks need to be 13 inches wide, so 3 plus 13 is 16. I'm going to line this ruler up with the 16 on the top of my mat and the 16 on the bottom of my mat. Hold it down, open my blade back up. There they are. And technically, if you didn't want to buy binding, you could probably use scraps plus these, turn them into 2.5-inch strips, and use this as binding. And I like to use scrap strips like this for binding. So when I get strips that are bigger than 2.5, I roll them into themselves and put them in the scrap pile for later. For when I do have a quilt where I need extra binding to finish it off. Okay. So, like I said, this is going to be cut into 2 different blocks. A smaller piece and a larger piece. We're not going to use the whole length of this fabric. So now that this is 13 inches wide, our first block needs to be 6.5, and then our next block needs to be 12.5. So my favorite ruler, I'll try and place that down here so there's not too many shadows. It's by Creative Grids. There's these rough, I don't want to call them sandpaper, rough dots and strips on the back of the ruler. And they keep it kind of stuck to your fabric so it doesn't slide all around. This side is smooth, but it's 6.5 inches wide. It's not 13 inches tall. So it's 12.5. So you can see close. So since it's 6.5, we're going to align the edge of this ruler with the bottom of the fabric. Since I'm going to start here, kind of make sure that's flush since I've got such a large elevation of fabric. Open up my blade, go most of the way down, stop, scoot your ruler just a little bit, hold it again, and finish. And this is your small fabric for the dark stack. So for the top one, I'm actually going to use the lines on my mat again. We need it 12.5 inches tall. So if we go to the 4.5 line, and I'm lining this up with the half line between 4 and 5, so 4.5 was 12.5. That's at that 17 mark here. So when there's such a short gap, 1/4 inch on each side, to follow along that line to get the 12.5, sorry, 13 wide, to get the 12.5 tall, we're going from 4.5 to 17. Line this up here. The lines on this fabric I think are throwing me off because they're not exactly straight. I like to go backwards a little bit. And forwards. Make sure you close your rotary cutter every time you're done using it. So in between cuts, after cuts, so these are the 2 sizes that I need for the dark fabrics. Let's get the light fabrics ironed and we'll cut those too. Alright, so for these light colored fabrics, let's try and get this squared up. Let's scoot it just a little bit further. That way I'm going to follow this line, the 7. And I'll cut it with my right hand this time. Pull back my blade. Make sure you're not going at an angle, because if you go at an angle, you're going to get a weird cut. So I go straight down. I've obviously got my computer monitor here that I'm trying not to hit. Got that squared up. Now we'll just take this probably to the 1/2 inch mark down here. Please be super careful if you do that. I could have just cut my finger. That's why I say put the protector back on the blade. So this is already lined up at the 7, and we need these 13 inches wide. So just so I have more room and I won't run into my computer, pull this down, make it square. And obviously 7 plus 13 is 20. Line up on the 20-inch mark. Yeah, I definitely need a new blade. All right, and same as last time, this strip is more than 2.5 inches wide. I'm gonna roll it up into itself and save it for spare binding parts. Because who wouldn't want bananas as a binding? Right, put that to the side. Okay. Here's my 6.5. Little pieces are cut. I'm going to square this up on my mat again. So this one needs to be 12.5 tall. We're at the 5 mark. 12 plus 5, 17 plus a half. Line up the 17.5 mark. And if you've got to lean over it to get straight down on that, feel free. Alright, and some people say this is scrap, but I do not. Alright, blade is protected. Place for everything, everything back in its place. I've got my binding fabric. I love a super stripy binding and I don't know why. And this glorious masterpiece is going to be the backing. Let me show you a little closer here. Aren't they precious? So obviously all of the specifications for how much fabric you're going to need are on the free pattern download from Fat Quarter Shop. Okay, so we've got all of our binding strips cut here, and even if we don't use all these, like I said, I cut these into 2.5-inch strips because I saved them for spare binding for other projects. So as long as your blade is closed and protected, you can put that back away, put your rulers away. And then you can put this to the side for later. Let me get the color blocks and I'm going to show you how to arrange them. Okay, so these are the stacks of light fabrics and dark fabrics that we made. Small pieces, big pieces, obviously. We're going to swap these, and it would be in your best interest if you don't leave these and these in the exact same order as their counterpart. So I don't want this fabric on top in the little stack and this fabric on top in the other stack. So I'm going to rearrange the two little stacks and then we'll pair them together and I'll show you how. So I got my machine all threaded up, ready to go, and I'll let you meet her. Her name is Sonia, because dad jokes are the literal best. She and I are going to show you how to piece all of these together, keep everything straight, and do everything quickly. So that you're not taking 10 hours to piece something that you're going to take another 4 hours to quilt. And if you're into labors of love and you like to sew really slow, or if this is your first time and you're learning and you want to take this really slow, great, do it. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go crazy fast or anything, but these are all going to get chain pieced together. So I'll let you meet Sonia. So this is Sonia. She's a singer, modern quilter, obviously, complete with NASA sticker, and of course the notorious RBG. And as a close-up, I'm using my piecing foot. It's got this awesome bar right here that keeps all of my fabric straight. And I have measured, it is a 1/4 inch from the needle. So this bar follows this line down onto the plate. And technically you could take some painters or masking tape and layer by layer build up a ledge to create a wall for your fabric to ride down to make sure that it stays a 1/4 inch the entire time it travels. Just Get It Done Quilts is the gal that taught me how to do that, but I obviously don't have that ledge built up on this machine. I actually have thread cutters on an ID badge command stripped to the side of my machine because I kept losing them. So you'll take your long string of fabric, snip the threads, and then I'll just lay them in a pile over there. Chain piecing. It's super easy. I feel like it saves a lot of time. That way you're not cutting threads in between every block. So I'll get all of these sewn together and then I'll show you how I take them apart. And then we can finish cutting our blocks, get those sewn together, and then get those sewn together, and then sew the rows together, and then we'll be all done.